All right, good Friday, good evening. Chris Fry in the 19 News Digital Studios with our continuing coverage of the Bianca Ellis murder trial and our justice for Julian. All right, so today the defense resting its case after calling just two witnesses today. Both were doctors who testified about the mental state of Ellis at the time she stabbed and killed 3-year-old Julian Wood in June of last year at the North Olmsted Giant Eagle. First up, Dr. Sarah West, who claims Ellis has such a severe mental illness that she did not know what she was doing when she killed the toddler. But the state got to have a rebuttal witness, and in a strange coincidence, Dr. West's teacher testified after her and completely disagreed, saying Ellis did know what she was doing and had a plan to do it. He claims she said over and over she wanted to go to jail, and Julian Woods paid the price. Here is the testimony from Dr. West.
To the most likely cause or reason for someone's symptoms.
I want to back up because after having left Volunteers of America, she then went into Things Outlet. Did she have any discussion with you regarding that?
She seemed to be a little blurry on the timeline, obviously, based on the videos. We know what happened, but she was not able to provide any kind of explanation as to why she did what she did, other than she was driven by feelings associated with the symptoms that she was having.
Did Ms. Ellis describe the attack itself, including her mind snapping and lack of control?
She did. She said, again, she was seeking help. She wanted to feel better. She said, my mind went blank. I just decided to follow them. She was experiencing the auditory hallucinations. She said that she was afraid and felt very afraid. She thought, maybe this isn't going to happen. I thought it was over. It wouldn't give me a second chance. My mind took over my body and just did what it wanted to do.
Okay. And what were your impressions of that response?
I think that that is very consistent with another hallmark of schizophrenia, which is disorganization. I'm not surprised that she was not able to articulate a clean, clear narrative given her mental state at the time. And
when did Ms. Ellis report realizing what had happened, such as when encountering the officer?
I asked her about the direct emotional consequences of the event for her. She suggested that she initially experienced a sense of relief, but later recognized what had happened when she was, I believe, in the jail.
What did you make of that statement after having attacked two individuals, feeling a sense of relief? What are your impressions regarding that statement?
I think that her actions were very much driven by her mental health symptoms. She felt compelled to do something and felt that it did in some way alleviate the duress that she was under.
Okay. I want to talk about her mental state on June 3rd. She also spoke of going blank and having no control. You mentioned that, right?
Yes.
And is that common for someone to identify that they don't have control over what's happening?
Yes, she shared that with me, and I would assume based on the disorganization that she was experiencing that it felt like she was out of control.
Okay. When was her last psychiatric hospitalization before June 3rd, 2024?
She was hospitalized in Florida in May of 24 following her time with the police and the hotel charges that she had gotten for trespassing.
Okay. And was she taking any medication at that time?
She was not.
Okay. And did she ever report using any alcohol or drugs on June 3rd, 2024?
She did say that she drank a small amount of a liqueur called Pink Whitney about 4 hours prior to these events.
Okay. They've heard it before, but I want you to say it. What is insanity versus competence?
So insanity is the mental status at the time of the act. That's what it's based on. Unlike competency, it doesn't change over time because we're looking at an isolated event, a specific point in time. It is based on, in the state of Ohio, two things. One must have a severe mental illness, that is generally a psychotic disorder. And because of that mental illness, that has to cause the individual to not know what they were doing was wrong.
Okay. And when asked about the wrongfulness of her actions, what did Ms. Ellis say regarding her inability to think due to the speed of the events?
She said, there was nothing I can do. It happened so fast.
Okay. What would Ms. Ellis have done differently if a police officer had been present?
So I ask this question because I'm trying to assess knowledge of legal wrongfulness. If someone were to respond, well, of course I wouldn't have done this because a police officer was there and they would have arrested me, that suggests that they may be aware that it was legally wrong. She responded differently. She said she would have gone to the officer and asked for help.
Now, you're interviewing her for sanity. How many months after the incident has occurred?
This would be approximately 8 months after the events of June 3rd.
Okay. And she's medicated at the time in which you're having the sanity interview. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did she describe to you how she felt after the events, including while she was in her cell, and what are her current thoughts about the incident?
It was only when she was at her cell, as evidenced by her interview, where she doesn't acknowledge these events occurred and is very focused on her money. She said when she was in her cell, I cried. I remember being very afraid, feeling very sorry and guilty at the time.
Okay. The discussion regarding the police officer was not a discussion that was had on June 3rd, on the day of the incident. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, say that again?
The discussion regarding the police officer. You had that conversation with her about 8 months later.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Do you expect that her answer would be different 8 months later versus around the time frame of when this happened, when she was unmedicated?
Yes. So as a matter of fact, when I saw her in July of 2024, there would be no way that I could proceed with a sanity evaluation, as one must have to attain competency to stand trial to even participate in a sanity evaluation.
Okay. As a result of all the sources of information, your reviewing of all of that information, did you have an opinion with a reasonable medical certainty at the time of the events on June 3rd of 2024, whether or not Ms. Ellis was suffering from severe mental disease, namely schizophrenia?
Yes. So it is my opinion with reasonable medical certainty that on June 3rd, 2024, Ms. Ellis was indeed suffering from symptoms associated with schizophrenia, a severe mental illness.
All right. And can you just go through your opinion and identify what you write in support of that?
So I try to identify historical factors, her mental state at the time, as well as her mental state following the events, so past, present, and future. On that day, prior to that, Ms. Ellis obviously had a long history of hospitalizations and mental health care in the community for a severe mental illness. On the day of June 3rd, most notable was her disorganization. She was having difficulty behaving in a way that made sense. She presented to the police department. She left the police department. She went to a shopping center. She entered a couple of stores, but was really unable to explain the linear or logical progression of that. Also of note, historically, I took into account the events that occurred earlier in 2024, including her time in California and Florida, where she engaged with the police in a nonsensical way, searching for a way to get arrested and spend time either in hospitals or otherwise confined in correctional facilities. Also notable is after her arrest for these events on June 3rd, her mental status was documented as continuing to appear quite disorganized and psychotic. She continued to receive diagnoses that would be consistent with this, both in the jail and at North Coast Behavioral Health Care.
Okay. Was there anything else?
Yes. So I would want to take into account treatment. She was not medicated at the time, so it would make sense that she was having symptoms of severe mental illness. Also of note is that when she was provided treatment, those symptoms resolved to the extent that she was able to communicate clearly.
So you indicate that the medication is an important component. You identify, in your opinion, on June 6, 2024, Dr. Baskin diagnosed Ms. Ellis with schizophrenia disorder, describing her thoughts as bizarre. Is that correct?
Yes. So Dr. Baskin is the psychiatrist that works at the Cuyahoga County Jail. This would have been 3 days after the events that occurred on June 3rd.
Okay. And then there's also a report from Ms. Stevenson as well. Who was she?
Ms. Stevenson is the jail social worker. She also described Ms. Ellis's mental status as being unusual. She sat on the floor in her jail cell without clothing. She ate food with her hands and made illogical statements about dinosaurs.
Okay. You keep asking. You spoke of the social worker, Ms. Stevenson,
Yes.
identifying the fact that she was on the floor in jail without her clothes on, eating food with her hands. Is that where we left off?
Yes.
Okay. And then you also interviewed her on July 3rd, 2024 as well. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And is that, and that also supports your opinion that she was demonstrating signs of schizophrenia?
Yes.
Okay. And then did she remain psychotic following her transfer to North Coast Behavioral?
Yes.
Was
So
that an important factor in identifying her severe mental disease?
yes.
Okay. You also offer an opinion with a reasonable medical certainty that at the time of the incident on June 3rd, 2024, Ms. Ellis' severe mental disease, namely schizophrenia, caused her to not know what she was doing was wrong. Is that correct?
Yes.
And can you go through what you've identified in support of that?
Yes. So in taking into account all the data that we've discussed, it appears that Ms. Ellis on that day, related to her severe mental illness of schizophrenia, was experiencing a rising crescendo of paranoid fear and irrationality, coupled with significant disorganization that culminated in an inability to consider the wrongfulness of her actions. Thus, she did not know they were wrong.
Okay. You also discuss, Ms. Ellis stated, my brain just snapped.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay. You go into number 2. What do you indicate there in support of your opinion?
As we discussed earlier, Ms. Ellis had no rational reason for harming the Wood family. She had never met them before that day and didn't feel like they had wronged her in any way.
Okay. And then number 3, you identify the fact that she did not attempt to avoid detection on June 3rd. Is that correct?
Yes.
Why is that important?
That's important because avoiding detection by the police would suggest that she was aware that her actions were wrong and she would be arrested for them. She did this in broad daylight in a busy parking lot and walked, not ran, away from the scene with evidence still in her hand. She was not wearing anything that would conceal her fingerprints at the time.
So someone who goes to the police station, and then several minutes later, she goes into a store and selects knives. Are you aware that she, after having selected the knives, walked around the store without concealing the knives?
Yes.
In Volunteers of America?
Yes.
Are you aware that she walked out of Volunteers of America and still had the knives in her hand?
She did, yes.
And then she went into Things Outlet, and she still had both knives with her hands on her hips. Were you aware of that?
Yes.
And were you aware that once she left Things Outlet, she went to Giant Eagle, and she walked into Giant Eagle with a knife in hand in the store, never concealed?
Yes.
Okay? Are you aware that it only took 30 seconds for her to identify Margot and Julian?
Yes.
And then she goes out to the parking lot, falling behind them, and attack them.
Correct.
There's that one moment in time where she is waiting in the foyer area of Giant Eagle before exiting and following them.
Yes.
Is there anything that was organized about that behavior? And how would you fit that into your opinion?
No, I see nothing organized about the events that occurred in this span of time.
Okay. You also go on and identify another factor about her cooperation with the police. Why is it that that's an important part of your opinion as well?
She did not run or flee from the police. She did what they asked. And as we've noted before, she has a long history of engaging with the police in an effort to get help for her mental health issues.
Okay. And as a result of your review of this file and the information provided, are you aware that she still had the knife in hand when the police responded?
Yes.
Does that go along with what you've discussed regarding, not caring about whether or not she's discovered or not?
Yes, she was not attempting to conceal the evidence.
Okay, thank you. And then number 5, although Ms. L stated that she consumed a small quantity of alcohol, it's unlikely that this precipitated the level of paranoia and disorganized behavior. You identify that as being another factor. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And then you have in number 6, you discuss the interview with Ms. Eggleton. Why is that important?
Her mom has known her all her life, and she shared with the police at the time that Ms. Ellis does have a history of mental illness and tends to become violent when she is not medicated.
Okay. After you opined as it related to her sanity, you go on to indicate due to the severity of her charges and their potential for serious negative consequences, you consider that Ms. Ellis may have malingered psychiatric symptoms. I've rejected this possibility on the following grounds. Can you go through why that's an important part of your report?
Sure. So the stakes are high, and there's potentially the risk of somebody making up psychiatric symptoms in order to escape responsibility. I always want to be thoughtful about that. As we noted before, Dr. Rinsberg performed testing that he felt did not indicate malingering or faking illness, but rather that Ms. Ellis was psychotic at the time. Also, disorganization is a symptom of schizophrenia that's very difficult to fake. We are trained in society to engage in linear and logical conversation, and it's hard to keep that up, especially in a hospital when you're observed 24 hours a day. So that symptom seemed very legitimate to me. I witnessed it myself, and there's certainly report of this throughout the medical record. Ms. Ellis has a long history of mental illness. Again, when there were no legal charges at issue, medical records confirmed her consistent and severe symptoms. Her symptoms were also corroborated by her mother. And Ms. Ellis didn't go overboard. She didn't tell me that she experienced every psychiatric symptom that I asked her about. She very much endorsed the ones that were consistently represented in her medical record.
Okay. And finally, you have an opinion after that. Can you identify what your opinion is?
So ultimately, to summarize, it's my opinion with reasonable medical certainty that Ms. Ellis suffers from a severe mental disease, namely schizophrenia, and was experiencing symptoms at that time related to this illness that caused her to not know what she was doing was wrong. And to the most likely.
All right, we will have more on day 5 and testimony from the Bianca Ellis trial as our Justice for Julian coverage continues. All right, welcome back. Our Justice for Julian coverage continues. Now for the other side of this argument, another doctor, Dr. Stephen Knopfsinger. He testified today that Bianca Ellis knew exactly what she was doing. She was being kicked out of her apartment for not paying rent, tried to accuse the North Olmsted Police Department of having her money, and they didn't. And that started her evil plan to kill so she would not get arrested. So let's hear now testimony from Dr. Knopfsinger.
Pleasant. She had good hygiene. Her level of physical activity was a bit reduced. She spoke at a normal rate and pressure at speech, but at a low volume. So I frequently had to either ask her to repeat herself or to repeat her statement back to her. She said she was mildly depressed. She had an emotional blunting, which is characteristic of people with schizophrenia.
What does that mean, emotional blunting?
Just that she didn't display kind of a normal range of emotions, from smiling to sadness when appropriate, but just more flat.
And is that typical of folks that have schizophrenia?
Yes.
All right.
She did report to me things that I believe were likely to be delusional, such as giving birth to multiple people in the past, or multiple babies in the past, but did not have other delusions like paranoia or thinking someone could read her mind. She told me that when I saw her in June 12th of 25, she heard voices talking to her approximately once daily, saying things to her such as, "I'm your child," or "Don't give up." Sometimes the voices didn't make sense, and she occasionally saw the vision of a lion. And the rest of the mental status is me just assessing her for any kind of cognitive deficits like problems with memory or concentration, which she did fine on.
Okay. All right. And so do you also have a conversation about Murtis Taylor?
Well, just that she told me she had been there for outpatient treatment, yes.
All right. So, let's see here. So that's our psychiatric history. We've gone through the mental status. Then you look at police reports prior to 6/3 of 24. So you look at all the reports that are provided to you.
Yes.
And is there anything of note that you want to share with us before we get to your conclusions at the end?
Sure. So keep in mind, again, these are police reports from the months prior to the offense and in different locations. So we have the January 26, 24 Bakersfield, California police reports. And again, I also watched the body cam videos. So this took place at the Kern Medical Center in Bakersfield, California, where She was arrested. She had refused to leave the medical center property. Nurses told told officers that Miss Ellis had.
Can I just jump in, Doctor?
Yes.
So I think the question was, is there anything in the police records that, and we could have it stated, I think you asked him, is there anything that stands out to him?
Yes.
Right, and so I don't know if everything as you're reading it, or is there something specific about the police reports that stand out to you with respect to your evaluation? Otherwise, I'm not stopping him from reading all of them, but I just wondered, was that the right question that I heard? And then maybe it does, maybe all of it does, I don't know.
Well, I was getting to the fact that she had been aggressive, that she had behavioral problems, that she had assaulted hospital staff and refused to leave the property. And in fact, when she was asked to leave the property, she demanded that the police be called. So she was combative, punched the 2 security guards, and she then told officers that they needed to take her to jail because she had just assaulted hospital staff. So I think it's pretty striking behavior that, in fact, she even told officers that she wanted to stay in police custody for a minimum of 2 weeks, and even asked, what do I need to do to stay in jail? And she asked officers how much time she could get for resisting arrest. I think also noteworthy was her bizarre dress. She was wearing pink boots, a skirt, a sweater, and wig. So what was noteworthy to me was that, number one, she's physically violent. Number two, she's demanding that the police be called. And number three, she's seeking to stay in jail, which I think is very unusual.
Well, is it unusual, Dr. Knopfsinger, for a person who suffers from schizophrenia?
Yes.
Why?
Well, the vast majority of people with schizophrenia, first of all, don't commit violent acts.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
The vast majority of people with schizophrenia do not commit violent acts. So here we have assaults on security guards, but also the fact that she's saying, I want to be arrested, and actually is seeking to stay in jail for a minimum of 2 weeks. I think that's unusual for anybody.
Okay. All right. Next, what did you observe next or review next?
When, about a month later, so February 24th of 24, the Cleveland Police Department records, police were called. She demanded that the shelter where she was staying at call police because she wanted to confess to a murder. So police officers arrived. She was talking about she had killed someone in Bakersfield and gave them very specific details about who she said she had killed, which is somewhat unusual. So the Cleveland detectives called up the Bakersfield Police Department to ask, was there someone who had been killed that kind of fit this profile? And Bakersfield said no, but they were aware of Bianca Ellis. In fact, they had warrants out for her for battery and assault. And then what was striking to me, and this is on the police body cam, is that Miss Ellis told the Cleveland officers that if they didn't take her to jail, if they let her out of her vehicle, that she was going to murder someone at the shelter so she could be arrested that night. She then said that she wanted to kill someone and to eat their flesh. So officers, I think, recognized that at least in part of this was mental illness, so they took her over to Metro Health, where she was seen in the emergency room. Where at Metro Health, then she became aggressive. She was agitated and was fighting with Metro Health nurses and doctors and received involuntary medication. So I thought that was noteworthy. The officers went back and talked to the shelter staff and asked kind of what set this off, and they said that Miss Ellis had been there for a week, staying mostly in bed, but that on that date, she had learned that her bank card was frozen for fraud, and she just went crazy after that and then engaged in all these behaviors.
So, doctor, again, her reactions based on her symptoms, if she's schizophrenic, are her reactions to all these situations the typical reactions of a person with schizophrenia?
No, there appear to be something else going on, such as anger problems and difficulty with frustration tolerance.
All right, and doctor, let's take that one step further. If she's a schizophrenic, she should be on medications, right?
Yes?
What if she's not on medication? Would it cause her to act the way she was acting?
Well, it would depend on the nature of her symptoms. But again, not every action that someone with schizophrenia commits is the product of their schizophrenia. People with mental illness can react for all kinds of motives that everyone can react with, such as anger and problems with temper.
And what about this disorganized belief when they're schizophrenic? How would you respond to that? That someone is having disorganized thoughts, and that's why they act a certain way?
Well, disorganized thinking generally causes someone to act in a random, disorganized fashion, not in a intentional, willful fashion.
All right, can you explain that to us, sir?
Sure. Typically, people with disorganized thinking as a product of their psychosis, when they get in trouble with the law, it's for minor offenses like trespassing or loitering, because they're not able to kind of understand laws and wind up having minor infractions because they're acting in a kind of a random, disorganized fashion. They tend to not commit specific intentional acts because if they're disorganized, they're not able to form the intent and to carry out a plan to carry out a more specific, focused, intentional act.
Okay, thank you. All right, you looked at a report from Florida and considered that, sir?
Correct. This is about another month later, March 25th of 24, where she was at a hotel in a lobby and wouldn't leave. She had a reservation made through a third-party vendor, but when got there, there was an extra fee for the resort fee that she couldn't pay. So she sat on the couch, wouldn't leave, and asked the front desk clerk to call law enforcement. So law enforcement came, told her that she would go to jail for trespassing. She continued to refuse to leave. Again, she asked to be arrested and taken to jail, which, again, I think is somewhat unusual. She said that she wanted to be taken to jail because she had no place to stay and it was cold outside.
Again, her affect, what kind of affect did she have that you were observing in that videotape?
In that tape, her affect appeared to be normal, and she did not appear to exhibit any psychotic symptoms. She was just mad because she couldn't stay there, and I guess understandably.
And so, again, she still had schizophrenia on that day when she was in Florida, correct?
Yes?
Because schizophrenia is, now doctor, suffice it to say that you reviewed all the psychiatric records prior to 6/3 of 2024. Is that a fair statement?
I didn't have all of her records, but I had a fair number of records.
That indicated that she had been suffering from schizophrenia.
Yes, for at least 10 years.
All right. And so then you also considered police records for 6/3 of 24, correct?
Yes.
All right. And you, in fact, took all the information that you had from the police records, from witness statements, from body cam, dash cam, and videos that you then created a timeline of the offense in your report?
The timeline, well, there is a timeline of the offense. I actually copied this from a detective report.
Okay, all right. And why did you do that?
Well, I thought it was very important because it summarizes the various video evidence in the 20 or 25 minutes up to the offense.
And did you, though, in fact, yourself watch every video that was provided to you?
I did, and I described that later in the report. So I have both the police description of the video and then my own description for my own watching of it.
And why do you do that?
Well, because there might be some things that are relevant to a psychiatric evaluation that a police officer might not recognize as they make their narrative report, summarizing the video. So I want to have a chance to look at it firsthand, to look for the presence or absence of any evidence that would indicate mental illness.
All right. And then you have the defendant's account of 6/3/24 of what happened that day, and that's given to you on about 6/12/25, approximately a year later.
Yes.
Okay? And you videotaped that, sir, correct?
I videotaped the whole 3-hour interview, of which part of it was her account of the offense, yes.
Okay? And we're obviously not going to play 3 hours of an interview this afternoon, are we, Doctor?
It's not up to me, but yeah.
No, we're not.
No.
Okay.
We're not playing 3 hours of the interview, but suffice it to say that it is part and parcel of your report,
Yes.
and you used that and evaluated the information that was provided to you to form your opinions.
Yes.
Okay? And so during the video, sir, you looked at the video, then you looked at video from Volunteers of America, Giant Eagle, you looked at psychiatric and medical records after 6/3/2024. Is that fair?
Yes.
All right. And you reviewed Dr. Hatters-Friedman's report.
Yes.
All right. And was she able to make a determination with regards to Miss Ellis?
She was not. She was concerned that there was some conflicting data and that the defendant appeared to report and exhibit both genuine signs of mental illness, but then some atypical signs that we don't see usually in people with schizophrenia, and some thrusting forward of symptoms, which would be concerned for malingering or exaggeration. So Dr. Friedman could not form an opinion and instead recommended that the court order Miss Ellis for a 20-day inpatient evaluation at the state hospital at North Coast.
And was that done?
Yes.
And did you review those records?
I did.
Okay. And, sir, did you use that information that you obtained from those records to formulate your opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
Well, again, the records post-offense are not going to give me important data on the sanity part, other than to corroborate the presence or absence in general of a mental illness. But it's not going to tell me specifically about the wrongfulness or about the defendant's motive for the offense. But it would just in the first arm, the mental illness part.
Okay. And so, Doctor, if we could, let's turn to page 33 of page 37 of your report. With regards to legal sanity, did you formulate an opinion in this matter, sir?
I did.
And what is your opinion, and what is it based on?
Well, I have opinions on both arms of the legal insanity test.
Okay, so let's start with the first part of the arm.
Yeah. It's my opinion with the reasonable medical certainty that the defendant had the severe mental disease of schizophrenia at the time of the 6/3/24 offense.
And what do you base that on, sir?
Several reasons. First of all, we have the defendant's report to me. She reported a history of schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder that she had had for many years before the offenses. And the symptoms she reported, including various hallucinations and delusions, fit with the diagnosis of schizophrenia. She also reported that she had been psychiatrically hospitalized and received treatment with antipsychotic and other medications, all kind of consistent with schizophrenia. So that was one part of the reason.
Now, doctor, isn't that just self-reporting?
That's self-reporting, which we don't rely on, but we take it as one piece of data, and then we look for the presence or absence of corroboration, which in this case there was.
Okay, and that's looking at all the records, correct?
The medical records and the statement from her mother, who corroborated that the defendant had schizophrenia. And then, of course, what we know about it, that once it's diagnosed, it tends to be a lifelong illness.
So there is no question that Bianca Ellis has schizophrenia. Can we agree on that?
We agree.
Okay, all right. So your next point then, sir, with regards to your opinion.
It's my opinion with reasonable medical certainty, however, that the defendant did not have a severe mental disease or defect at the time of the June 3rd, 2024 offense that caused her to not know the wrongfulness of the offenses. So despite having schizophrenia, it did not cause her to not know the wrongfulness of the offenses. Pleasant.
All right, so you've heard testimony from Dr. Stephen Noffsinger, and the testimony and the cross-examination did not finish before the jury was sent home for the weekend, so they'll continue on Tuesday, so no court on Monday because of the Columbus Day holiday. It is expected that closing arguments will begin also be on Tuesday, and the jury could have the case by late Tuesday afternoon. Of course, we will be streaming that coverage. Once again, once court resumes on Tuesday, we'll have day 6 of this Bianca Ellis murder trial as our Justice for Julian coverage will continue next week. All right, I'm Chris Fry in the 19 News Digital Studios. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'll see you in about an hour plus on 19 News at 10 o'clock, but don't forget about our 19 News at 9 with Tiffany Tucker. That's coming up in just under 20 minutes. We'll see you then.